push that really allowed you to decide, I'm going to reclaim my voice. I'm going to do this work. And I want to do that enough that, like you said, it's hard. It's a hard journey to go on, and it requires a lot of grief, a lot of confronting yourself very honestly. What pushed you to choose that path, that journey?
The very beginning, I will tell you how it all started. It wasn't that I was thinking, I want to get past this. I was kind of forced to do it. So I'll be very vulnerable. Um, I was abused by someone, an extended member of my family. I may ask you to take that out. I don't know. But that's what
That's
happened.
okay. Yeah.
And it was ignored. It just was swept under the rug. I think, my parents loved me and still love me to this day, but I think they didn't know how to handle it. And so it was easier to not deal with it than have to deal with it. Um, I was in my 20s. I was married and had kids in my 20s, and I hadn't told my husband about any of it because, as they ignored it, I ignored it. I tried to pretend like it never happened.
Yeah.
Well, we ran into that person again. I saw him, and it triggered just everything, the thoughts and the memories and all the things. And so we had been at church, my husband and I had been at church, and I don't even remember what the message was about, but the title of it, because I started sobbing after he said the title of the message was, "It's Not Your Fault." And then I just cried through I couldn't tell you anything he said. And we were sitting with some friends. I was sitting next to a friend and she was sitting next to her husband. And the whole time I'm sobbing, my husband's just looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And she went and got me actually, I think her husband went and got me some Kleenexes because literally I cried through the whole thing. Well, she knew, even though I didn't tell her, she knew because she had lived that herself. So later that week, she reached out to me and she said, "Look, I know what's going on. I know what happened." And she said, "I walked that same road. And if you are interested," she said, "someone bought me this book and she walked through it with me to begin healing." And she said, "If you're interested, I will do that with you." So that was the very beginning. And from then on, really the reason I continued to seek healing was because it affected me in a very big way. It affected my personality. It affected the way I thought. It affected my marriage. It affected the way I parented. I mean, it affected everything. And
Yeah.
it had been repressed for so many years that it was just, things were just coming out. My marriage was probably the biggest part of it. My marriage and my parenting were probably the biggest reasons. And it wasn't that I was saying, I'm going to go get healed and fixed. And it was making life hard, not dealing with the effects of it. And so it was a slow journey. I mean, it took decades, and it wasn't that everything just happened at once. It was a gradual thing. I think the year before I started my podcast was probably one of the biggest, maybe 2 years before, the biggest, like, I don't know, the most profound healing that I had. I was in a few different classes, and then that's when I spent the time with my life coach for 6 months. And
Mm,
so those were probably where I made the most progress. And, my life coach I don't know if I told you this when I talked to you before, but she was a writing coach, and I had done a little bit of writing. And so that's what I wanted to do, was writing. So we didn't talk about writing. She was a life coach, but a writing coach. We didn't talk about writing, but she was helping me with things that were going to help me with my writing. You know what I mean? She was helping me with
right.
my heart and my thoughts and my things that were going to help. But by the end of the 6 months, I wanted to do a podcast. I didn't even want to do writing. So, it worked. It helped. Whatever she was doing totally helped. And so I'm thankful. I'm not thankful for that journey. I wish I didn't have to go through that. I wish
Of course.
no one would ever have to go through that. But I'm thankful for the opportunities that I've had to find healing. And I would encourage anybody that's listening, it's not fun to have to face that kind of stuff. It's not. In fact, it's really, really hard, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Mm. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that with me. I so deeply appreciate that. And I hear you in the sense that, like, it is not fun. It is oftentimes one of the biggest critiques I hear about therapy and counseling, and I think there's something to say for it, is that it can re-traumatize people when you reconfront the initial trauma because you've built up all of these defense mechanisms to protect your unconscious and your heart from the deep hurt and betrayal that came, and to have to look at it again can be super re-traumatizing. But, I just wanna ask, what makes it so worth it? I think it would be easy for me to assume, like, yes, it's worth it because, like you said, you have your voice and there's a sense of freedom there, but I would love to hear that in your own words. What does the worth it really feel like for you?
Well, for me, we talked about this in the other interview. I am a Christian and I, believe in God. I have a relationship with the Lord. And for me, I finally felt like I could be who I was created to be. I
Mm,
wasn't trying to be something that I thought everybody else wanted me to be. I stopped trying to people please and trying to make sure everybody was happy because that was an effect of, the trauma. To make sure
right,
everybody was okay. I stopped doing that, but now I finally feel like I can be who I was created to be to begin with. And, there's a lot of reasons I'm sad that I had to go through that. My marriage suffered a
of
lot
course.
for a lot of years, and that's one thing I'm sad about is my dear husband has been I've always said he has the patience of Job, and he had to have it to be married to me because he is the most patient person on the planet. And, it wasn't fun, it wasn't easy for a long time for us. And so I'm thankful that now it is. Now it's good. Now, I know who I am and I'm able to speak up when I need to speak up. And he appreciates that.
Right. That's a healthy
Yeah.
relationship, is to want that from your partner and to appreciate when you have that it is a partnership in that way.